Right. So we've got a very interesting deep dive ahead of us today. Looking into some sources you guys sent in about CoagCheck XS PT test strips.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, what jumped out at us is this isn't just like a faulty product situation.
Yeah.
This is really about the very, very delicate balance of managing warfarin,
Right.
which, as we know, is a medication where too little can lead to blood clots and too much can cause serious bleeding.
Exactly.
So when you have a device that is to help patients kind of stay in that therapeutic window,
Mm-hmm.
and it malfunctions, the potential for harm is pretty significant.
Absolutely. And anyone who uses Warfarin knows that accurate monitoring is so important
Yeah.
for that exact reason.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is that it's not just one recall that we're looking at here.
Right.
You sent in sources that detailed 2 separate recalls involving these CoagCheck XSPT test strips.
Yeah.
And right away, it's like, okay, how could something like this happen?
Yeah.
How could this seemingly straightforward at-home medical device be subject to such big issues? Not once, but twice.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's look at the first recall, which was initiated by Roche Diagnostics.
Okay.
The FDA classified this as a college class, I recall.
Okay.
And that's their most serious designation.
Right.
Meaning there's a high probability of serious adverse health consequences or even death.
Wow.
And that recall was dated September 13th, 2018, but wasn't announced publicly until November 1st.
Okay, so that was over 1.1 million packages of these test strips.
Right, nationwide between January and late October of 2018.
Right, so we're talking a significant amount of time and a significant number of these test strips.
Yeah.
And as we know, these are used with CoagCheck meters by both patients at home and some healthcare providers to measure their INR.
Yep.
Which essentially tells them how quickly their blood is clotting.
Exactly.
So what's interesting to me is that Roche's reasoning for the recall was...
Well, they reported that the strips were producing falsely high INR results due to recalibration to a new international standard.
So they were trying to actually prove things and it backfired.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, how such a fundamental change in calibration could lead to such a critical error.
Yeah, I mean, if you're adjusting the baseline for the readings, and that's causing the strips to consistently report higher clotting times than there actually are,
Right.
then, it's natural to think, okay, well, my INR is higher than it is, so I need to reduce my dose of warfarin.
Exactly. And that's the danger, because if the warfarin dose is lowered unnecessarily based on a false reading, the patient's blood could become too thick and increase their risk of developing those dangerous blood clots we talked about.
Right. And that's like the list of potential consequences is pretty severe.
Yeah, it's really serious.
Death, embolic stroke, transient ischemic attacks, pulmonary embolism, and other arterial blockages.
Right.
So it's really no joke.
It's not. And it really shows how important accurate INR monitoring is for people on warfarin.
Yeah, because, warfarin is prescribed for some serious stuff.
Absolutely. Atrial fibrillation to prevent blood clots in the legs or lungs. And for patients with prosthetic heart valves, you really need precise management.
Yeah. So getting into the specifics of the recall, the Feldman-Shepard source that you sent in actually listed all the lot numbers.
Oh, wow.
For the CoagCheck XSPT test 2x24 strips, the CoagCheck XSPT test 6 strips, and the CoagCheck XS test 24 tests USA.
Okay.
So these are like very specific batches that they identify.
Yeah.
And they advise people to immediately stop using them.
Right.
And either switch to the newly calibrated strips that Roche started distributing towards the end of October 2018, or to go and get a standard blood test at a lab. And importantly, they said nobody should adjust their warfarin dose without talking to their doctor first.
Absolutely.
It's pretty serious when you see that attorney Mark Tanner recommended that anyone who believes they were injured by the strips should contact a lawyer.
Wow.
And save the strips as evidence. So, that really suggests that there was concern over adverse events that could be directly linked back to these inaccurate readings.
Definitely. And it makes you think about those people, between September when the recall was identified and November when it was announced.
Right, that period of time.
Yeah. How many people were using those faulty readings?
Right, were there strokes or other thromboembolic events that maybe at the time neither the patient nor their doctor attributed to the faulty device?
Yeah, it's a little unsettling to think about.
Yeah. So then on top of all of that, we have the second recall.
Right.
This one involving Terrific Care Medex supply.
Right, a separate one.
And this was a voluntary recall announced in December 2018.
Okay.
And then the FDA issued its warning in February of the following year.
Okay.
So 2019.
Got it.
And this was interesting because these strips were distributed directly to consumers all across the U.S.
Okay.
by Terrific Care Supply between late December 2017
Right.
and mid-December 2018.
Mm.
The interesting part is that these were coag check test strips with catalog or REF numbers that did not end in 160.
Okay.
And that's why they weren't part of Roche's initial recall in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Because Roche didn't distribute these particular strips here.
Got it.
So then the question is, where did they come from?
Yeah, where did they come from?
And it looks like Terrific Care Supply got these Roche-manufactured strips from an unknown source and then imported and sold them in the U.S.
Interesting. So they bypassed the normal distribution channels.
Yeah. And they were selling them directly to consumers. And again, the risk is the same, right?
It's that same risk of the falsely high INR results, which can lead to people making bad decisions about their treatment.
Right. So either reducing or stopping their warfarin or taking vitamin K to reverse its effects.
Exactly.
So Terrific Care Supply, they initiated a voluntary recall after getting complaints from consumers.
Makes sense.
And if you bought these strips from them, they said stop using them right away. And they provided an email address, a phone number, a mailing address.
Wow.
If you wanted to return them.
Okay.
So the FDA also classified the Terrific Care Supply recall as Class I in February 2019.
Right.
So again, they're very seriously concerned about the potential for harm or death associated with these unauthorized and potentially faulty strips.
Yeah, I mean, you've got FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb expressing concern that this distributor continued to sell the test strips in the U.S.
Right.
Even after Roche had stopped because of safety concerns.
Yeah.
He called it a significant public health concern.
Yeah.
So it makes you think about the oversight of medical devices and how they get into the country sometimes.
Absolutely. And again, for people using the Terrific Care Supply strips, stop using them.
Right.
Find an alternative testing method, either a lab blood draw or a different coag check meter.
Yeah.
The FDA even listed all the coag check meters that were compatible with these strips.
Oh.
And basically, if you are having any issues with your INR test meter, whether it's a malfunction, incorrect results, or you think that it led to an injury or death, report it directly to the FDA through their MedWatch program.
Right.
So that they can continue to monitor the safety.
Yeah. It's so important for them to have that information.
So we've looked at these two recalls.
Two separate but related recalls.
For the same problem, essentially.
Yeah. Those inaccurate INR readings, which could have been very dangerous for warfarin patients.
Right. They were both classified as class.
Right.
So we're talking about a high potential for bad health outcomes or even death.
Right. And it really highlights how important it is for these medical devices to be accurate and reliable, especially when they're used to manage such serious conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you think about all the different moving parts in the manufacturing and distribution of medical devices.
Yeah.
And are there systems in place that are robust enough to make sure patients are safe?
Yeah.
So, what can we do to prevent these situations in the future?
Right.
And if something like this does happen, how can we make sure patients are aware of it and can respond?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
Thanks for sending in those sources, everybody. This was a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.